All right, Mike Holla, what's up, man?
Hey man, not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Good, doing great, doing great. So I've watched a lot of your content about Mortal Kombat, Tekken, etc., Street Fighter. You are refreshingly one of the smartest and most reasonable people I have ever heard because
Thank you.
if it makes sense, you're like, well, this makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you say, well, why doesn't that happen here or here or here, but it only happens here?
Yeah.
So obviously there's something wrong. So you played MK9, like so you were there in like the beginning. You said you played Street Fighter 4, Soul Calibur, etc. You got into that game a little bit. What did you think of it?
Mortal Kombat 9, I always thought that I thought they made a fun game. It was exciting because Mortal Kombat 9 was like the first game that was being taken a bit more seriously for what became NRS. But because I was playing the 3D ones and nobody was really playing them, it was nice to see all these people offline playing it. And once that sort of died down and I'd gotten used to seeing everyone, it kind of settled in that the game was a bit of a, I don't want to say like it wasn't good because it was fun, but it was clearly broken. It was just kind of like incoherent mess across the screen, and I kind of fell out of favor with it. So it started off well. I was very high on Mortal Kombat 9, and I think within a year and a half, I sort of was like, I'm kind of tired of this because there's so many things in it that just don't make sense or seem unfair, and I don't like playing games where I feel like the game killed me and not the player.
Yeah, true, 100%, 100%. Um, there were a couple things that MK9 did back then that I think went unnoticed. That was back in the era where comeback factors were huge. If you remember, Tekken
Yeah,
introduced Rage.
yeah, that was quite bad when they brought that in the first time.
Um, and I think didn't Harada make a comment that said he doesn't want the better player to relax for even a second?
He said something that made people really angry, and it was very clear. I mean, I was there playing Tekken 6 as well, and I was playing it at the arcades at our local one, and I remember how angry people were getting because of how much rage was really ridiculous in Tekken 6. I don't know if people remember how absurd it would get, but it was clearly designed to help people get back in the fight.
And Marvel 3 also had the original level 3 X Factor.
Yeah,
It was the original Dark Phoenix level 3 X Factor was probably one of the most entertaining things to watch, but one of the worst things to be on the receiving end. But we all wanted to see it.
yeah. I with
Uh,
Marvel versus Capcom 3, I accepted it because the game was so much fun and it was so ridiculous and over the top, and everyone seemed to be having a good time that I was like, there are ways around it, even though it seems absurd. But I think that only really came after they gave her a bit of a nerf.
yeah, of course, of course. But one of the strengths that Mortal Kombat 9 had was it was one of the only games at that time period that didn't have a built-in comeback factor. Like obviously there was Cyrex and his resets and Smokes and his resets, but the game didn't have a engine comeback factor. You see
Yeah,
what I'm
true.
saying?
Yeah,
Like within the system, which got a lot of people onto it from those other games because it was refreshing to not have a built-in comeback mechanic where now you have a super that you didn't have, or you do more damage and you're much faster or whatever because you have level 3 X Factor, or you have rage now, so you do more damage just because you have low life. It
yeah,
was one of the first games that did that, at least in that time period, because everything was going, comeback mechanic, and certainly there were characters that had their own, but there was none in the system.
yeah.
I think Mortal Kombat 9 was very luckily well received. I think Mortal Kombat, the name, built that scene by itself. I don't think
Oh,
the players had to do
100%.
much.
100%. The name Mortal Kombat carries so much weight that I think, like, to go back to something that you said in one of your other videos, they have gotten away with so much because it is Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat, it's like GTA to a lesser extent, but for fighting games or Call of Duty. They can get away with murder, and they have for a while now. Obviously, it's caught up to them, but it's been a long time coming. And I think that name, the Mortal Kombat name, I don't think Tekken or Street Fighter could have gotten away with this. As a matter of fact, we know Street Fighter couldn't. They had to really change Street Fighter 5 up for it to become acceptable, and that took years and years and years. People were shitting on it on day one. With MK, they've kind of let things run for a while. Obviously, this mess up is really egregious, so everyone's kind of tuned out.
Yeah, I think so. For me, with MK9 was probably one of the only times I ever felt like they actually cared.
Yeah,
They were memed quite a bit by the FGC, right? It's going to be infinite death combos, all this garbage, right? So I think they put a real conscious effort to make the game good. They brought in several testers, me being one of them, and it seemed like they actually, if you look at the content, right? Even the fatalities, right? They weren't super fast. I mean, they weren't a big, long production, right? A lot of them were the classic fatalities, Sub-Zero spine rip, things like that. They had some of the classic fatals in there. Kung Lao kind of had a pun on his like split you in half, only he did it a little differently, right?
Yeah.
But they were a little faster. They kept cool stage fatalities in there, feed you to the tree, all that stuff. The subway fatality. They really went with a lot of nostalgia, I feel like, for MK9. I feel like a lot of MK9's nostalgia sold the game. Only goes back to the legacy. When people come back to something for a while and they're like, oh man, I remember that. And the game still has it, right? Only in a
Yeah.
different capacity. It brought a lot of people back. Like the nostalgia alone really rubbed a lot of people the right way.
Yeah. Completely.
And I feel like the system wasn't perfect. It had tons of bugs. But you spoke about something in one of your videos about individual styles. Like the most important thing I feel like in a game is that freedom of expression for the player.
Yeah.
I feel like if a player is put into a box, they lose interest very quickly.
Yeah, no, definitely. Even to not use the Tekken example, if you go and look at Street Fighter 4, that's another fighting game that came back and it brought a lot of people back. I think a lot of people attribute Street Fighter 4 to the game that really had the FGC resurgence. And Street Fighter 4 was not a perfect game, but everybody knew there was something special there and there was something to build upon. And one thing I noticed with Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter is that Mortal Kombat was very good at getting people into play, but it wasn't very good at keeping people. Whereas Street Fighter was doing both of them, and Street Fighter 4 had a long, healthy lifespan. And by the end of it, and I still think today, people still find things on Street Fighter 4. When you watch certain players play, like back in the day, you would know that that's Daigo's Evil Ryu or that's Tokido's Akuma, but you never really got that with Mortal Kombat. At least Mortal Kombat 9, I think it's the furthest that we really got, or as close to that as we got. And even though I fell out of favor with the game, I could acknowledge that it was actually a pretty fun game, and I could see why so many people liked it. But it still didn't reach the heights of player expression that Street Fighter 4 did, which is the game that I usually compare it to, just in terms of them both coming back after having been on a hiatus for a while and bringing in players.
I feel like it did bring a lot of players in, but again, going from the 2D arcade Mortals, I just don't feel like there was a way to bring in a lot of those people, you know?
Yeah,
I just feel like the game wasn't that. It was a modern version of the game. So a lot of the people that only played the classics that were like significantly older, I don't feel like it brought a lot of them back, because it wasn't run jabs, et cetera, right?
yeah,
So it was a modern game. They modernized Mortal Kombat and they basically used the formula that they already knew would win. They basically made characters play like traditional versions of themselves, Um, Cabal with his gas blast, and of course they said, well, his spin, let him cancel it for pressure, right? They modernized certain moves, right?
yeah,
Now I'm not here to discuss how overpowered or not overpowered one thing is over another, but they brought a very classic feel to the characters. But I feel like there was a freedom of expression. If you watch someone like Rio's Cabal, it wasn't like Detroit's Cabal. Detroit's Cabal wasn't like Kerbo's Cabal. You can clearly watch them all, and even though they're the same character and they're trying to do roundabout the same thing, they all go about it in different ways. It's like in Tekken, a Mishima is still trying to be a Mishima, right?
yeah.
But they move differently, they do things differently at different times. You can clearly see a difference between Qdons and, like if Knee's playing Devil Jin, right?
Oh, yeah,
There's
100%.
there's a clear difference. And I think that is a big deal because you need to be able to feel like I created the way to play this character, right?
Yeah,
Whether
that's a
it's
massive
good or
deal.
bad, maybe it doesn't have to be the right way or the wrong way. You know, it's I'm playing for fun, and even if I'm not a pro player, I play the character in a manner that I feel like works best for me. I'm not, whether you're going to tournaments or not, you can still play for fun with friends and you feel like you have that original, even if it's just one thing. I do this one thing or this one combo that nobody else does, right? It's mine. This is what I do.
Yeah, something that you came up with.
Yeah, I feel like MK9 had that. And one of and not many casual players can relate to this, but maybe it doesn't sound like fun to most people. One of the most fun feelings I've had is going to tournament. Losing sucks. But when you're on the plane ride home, that thought of how did this guy get out of what I was doing? Right? And then you're running through your mind. But you're not discouraged because you know you're going to go home, you're going to replicate the situation, and you're going to find a different and better and more effective way. You're going to close that off and say, okay, now I'm going to do this. And then his only option is to do that. I was a trapper. So a trapper, you only show them the way out that you want them to have and then make the read when they're going to take it.
Yeah.
And it was good because you could constantly reinvent and reinvent and reinvent and reinvent through the life of the game.
Yeah,
I feel
well,
like
I
that is
remember
very
watching your
important.
Sub-Zero. I knew it was your Sub-Zero when I was watching you play. So, I do, yeah, I agree. It did exist in Mortal Kombat 9. I don't feel like it was as, I don't feel like the expression was as strong as some of its competitors, but I do agree that it
Sure.
was there.
No, 100%. It definitely wasn't as strong. But it was I feel like it was their first start, right? And Mortal Kombat also had a lot of success just because it's Mortal Kombat. It was put in MLG, etc. But the community support was there. And as silent as the developers are now, they were very, very, very active there.
Yeah,
They
I
would
remember.
actually go, they would go and travel to our turn. I remember when I was at one of the CEOs, and it was so opposite. It was so opposite at that time. Harada was there. And I'm sitting there with Fabin fighting GM, and they were talking about Bruce's back two, one of my favorite moves of all time as a defensive player. I love that move in Tekken 6. There was, but I'm like, hey, there's Harada right there, man. Why don't you, tell him whatever? And they went to talk to Harada, and then he grabbed the photographer, said something in Japanese, peace sign, and I was like, he doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Thinks you guys are a bunch of casual scrubs. I was like, you guys are beating Koreans. And I realized at that point Harada did not have the touch of the community like he does now.
Yeah.
NRS was opposite. They were everywhere at our tournaments, in our streams. You could message them on AIM and they would message you back.
Yeah,
Like
I
direct
remember. I remember
contact.
seeing them around everywhere. Like obviously, I'm in the UK, so I didn't see them in person. But I remember watching things and seeing them there, and seeing the activity on Twitter. I'm pretty. Were they active on Test Your Might as well?
They were active on Test Your Might. They were in our streams. So even weeklies, like VSM Weekly, they're in the stream talking to everybody. Tournament streams, they're in the stream talking to people. They're always present, right? So you felt like they were always there, and they were the PDP tournament in Vegas. They all flew there.
Yeah.
Not just Ed Boon. Ed Boon was there. Paulo Garcia was there. Lead designer John Edwards was also the co-lead designer at that time. Edwards was there. A lot of them were there. And even like Evos, you would see like them, Nick Nicastro, by the way, one of the best fighting game designers I've seen. Any ingenious idea, I promise you, you can. That's his character. And they all they were all present. They were all there. It was like the community felt, so even though we understood the limits in technology because they let us know.
Yeah.
They patched the game after 6 months was the final patch. They did the best they could. But they also let us know the way the game was coded, moves were tied to one another. So with that primitive coding, they couldn't affect one version of the move without harming the other version of the move. We understood all these things. They let us know. They were very transparent with these things. And we accepted the game as it was. There were no more patches for after 6 months, which then forced us to find a way. The old school arcade mentality, right? There's no more help coming, find a way.
Yeah.
And you would be amazed what people can overcome when they have to.
Oh, definitely. I remember the Third Strike days. I don't know if like you probably do remember, but
I
Makoto was
remember.
considered like really
Yeah,
like
100%.
low tier,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden I can't remember what his name was, but he came along and just destroyed everyone with Makoto, and suddenly everyone loved the character.
No, 100%. And I remember those days, and it just was so opposite where Tekken was. I really want people to understand, looking at the numbers now, where they came from. MK just appeared out of nowhere again and was immediately over Tekken.
Yeah.
Crushed it and crushed everything. This doesn't happen where a game loses its competitive presence for so many years and not only outsells every other game, which they always did with the 3D titles, but their tournament scene is immediately inserted and automatically favored right under the Capcom umbrella. You know, over people that played Virtua Fighter, over people that played Tekken and Soul Calibur, which had a much bigger presence in the tournament scene before Mortal Kombat came back around.
Yeah.
And they got opportunities that, MLG, they did their thing with Tekken 6, but when they came back around, they chose Mortal Kombat over Tekken.
I think that's
And
partly because back in the day, Mortal Kombat was always seen as Street Fighter's competitor. But now that we understand, I mean, back then we didn't have like the understanding, or at least I didn't have the understanding of fighting games that I do now. And I think a lot of people have woken up to the fact that Mortal Kombat was never that game. Like, it was never like, it's the way even the digital 2D ones, they're extremely broken. Like, you've got Kung Lao carrying you from one side of the screen to the other, back and forth, and
with his spin, yeah.
Noob Cyber was absolutely busted. And when you go back and look at Mortal Kombat, even the 3D ones, a lot of them were just broken messes. Some characters were unusable, and I think now people have wisened up to the fact that Tekken is really, I wouldn't say the competitor to Street Fighter, but it's the other one that people would look at seriously. And Mortal Kombat, to me now, I look at Mortal Kombat in the same way that I look at Smash Brothers. I've stopped taking it as a serious fighting game because its developers won't take it as a serious fighting game. And now when I look at its history, it kind of makes sense. It's never really been that game. I think that they tried to paint it up that way, and I think that they caught lightning in a bottle with a couple of installments, but I don't think they ever had the competitive mind to make it be in the same sort of like lane as Street Fighter and Tekken. That's just how I look at it.
It's true, and you can tell they lack an understanding of how fighting games are. I don't want to cover the Injustice games because that's just, people are going to have their own opinion on that. And
Yeah.
But from 9 to X was a pretty drastic change. Now, the variation system was their answer to, I'm being counterpicked, and I don't want to switch my character. I want to play my character.
Yeah.
As a fighting game developer, you have to understand there is no way to prevent counterpicking.
Yeah, it's literally impossible.
No matter what you do, there will always be characters that match up better against other characters and worse against other characters. There is no way around it. And for some reason, they created this variation system where they split characters in 3.
Yeah.
And the problem is, that's like if Tekken 8 right now said, do you want to play Kazuya with a God Fist, or no God Fist but Hell Sweep, or no God Fist or Hell Sweep, but he can do heat moves and power crushes?
I can imagine the uproar if they tried to do something dumb like that.
That is what they did. No, in some cases, all 3 variations were powerful enough to be used in different situations.
Yeah.
In many of the situations, though, they had to balance the I'll use Sub-Zero as an example. The Ice Clone is a devastating move. I will never sell short how devastating it is. But in order for him to have that, they had to make sure he had a lot of weaknesses to balance that move out, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't have it anymore, those weaknesses are still there. And those weaknesses are only covered up by that move, but the move is no longer present. A lot of other characters were built around some of the same things. If you look at Kotal Khan, if you took Sun God with his grappling, War God with the weapon, right?
Yeah.
And then what was Blood God with the totems and the damage and everything, and put them all in one character, you have a phenomenal character with multiple things to look out for, multiple ways, and it can fight in most matchups. But when you split him in 3, you're creating a problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Right? You are now allowing him to be counterpicked more frequently than if he had all that in one. So, and the problem ultimately is when you rebuild a system from scratch, it's very difficult. People don't realize how long it takes to do this because you have to come up with every move individually, what they do on every possible animation, right? On hit, on jump, on slightly knocked back. They all have to have an individual animation, individual property. It takes a long time to code a game from scratch. All new characters, all new moves, all new everything. They only leave themselves a few months to then fill in the rest of the content.
Yeah, they do this every
And
time as well.
every time. MKX, I feel like was fun. I feel like they got very lucky because while it had a ton of problems that were unacceptable, they it was fun enough for people to stick around.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, even the character I played Scorpion Inferno. I think that's what its name was. The one where it had like the
Mhm.
hell things coming out of the
Yes.
ground. And I knew when I was picking it, I was like, this variation at a competitive level is basically useless. But I had
Yeah.
a lot of fun with it. And I think I got away with murder basically because nobody knew what was going on. So I was able to like, I got to number one on the leaderboard. But I think once people caught on and realized that Hellfire is actually the variation to go to,
Yeah.
I mean, I think people use ninjutsu a little bit, but the variation I was using was essentially useless at a high level.
Yeah. And that's only because the overhead was actually reactable when it was good when it was offline.
Yeah,
So you could do forward four, you could see the flame trail, and the low was just not fast enough. You know what I mean, to surprise people. So at the end of the
yeah.
day, he didn't. You know,
But it was still
um,
fun. I had good fun with it, but when I'd play Foxy online, like we had a couple of sets online, and I was like, yeah, there's just no way I can't win with this variation. It's too slow.
too slow. Yeah. So I want to tell you something about MKX. I was at the Fatal Eight. I had been part of the Championship Gaming Series with Dead or Alive, all the FIFA, all those other games, right? It failed miserably. I was behind the scenes. I knew it was going to fail when I saw that they were paying people $60 a pop to sit in the audience. I said, you can't monetize this product. It's doomed to fail.
Right.
And it did fail within 2 seasons, 1.5 seasons. But the same guy who did that ran Fatal 8. And it was much different because as someone who kind of tested the game a little bit, I was able to, they were like, hey, go, kind of show everybody a few combos, because they wanted it to be very flashy. They wanted people to pick multiple variations, right? So like I would sit with Tony T, talk about some stuff. I remember I sat with MIT for a little bit, whatever. Many of the players, right? PL was going over a lot of Kung Lao stuff. Ryan Hart was playing Kung Jin. To me, Ryan Hart versus PL, that was great because you have Ryan Hart, who is arguably one of, you could say, the most accomplished fighting game player of all time.
Yeah.
He's like the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of fighting games. He is the biggest winner in fighting game history.
Isn't he in like the
There's,
Guinness Book of
he
Records?
is, yes, he is the biggest winner in fighting game history, and that was such a great fight just for, just those two going at it. Two of the smartest people. And I remember, when uh, I forget who it was. It was MIT against PL. PL gets a 2-0 lead. MIT switches variations, comes back and wins. It looks like, wow, this variation system, it was displayed very well.
Yeah.
The audience actually paid money to be there, and they loved it. There was a woman there. She was the an anchor for one of the news stations, and she loved it. And I was like, this is it. You have found a way to bring in people who have no interest about fighting games, and they had a great time. I said, this is. Most people didn't realize what a huge step that was for fighting games, but it was a huge step.
Yeah.
Sales numbers aside, just the launch alone, Mortal Kombat X was the biggest and most successful and most hyped launch of any NRS game ever.
Yeah, I remember we had Fate 08 here as well in the UK. We had it at Comic Con.
Oh, you did have one over there.
Yeah, I competed in it. I went up against ISDD, and that was
Oh,
one of
I
like
see.
that was
Yeah.
an insane match. Like he basically brought me to 1 HP, and I somehow mounted a comeback. And I just remember that everyone was going crazy. So I remember when MKX came out, people were really going crazy for it.
They were going crazy for it. And I just remember I remember that first combo breaker the crowd there for MKX was unbelievable. The community for that game was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to crush NRS here for not using Legacy because I feel like they could have gotten away with making MKX the way it was and then gone Legacy and improving on that game going forward. Either 9 or X could have worked, right? They were honest. When you find something magic, that's a great idea like that, to find it twice is almost impossible. A third time, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was something they could have built off of, I felt, but they began to make mistakes from the beginning. Their netcode was atrocious. Now, Street Fighter 4's netcode was very good for the time.
Yeah, for
I feel
its time,
like.
it was not bad. Yeah.
And Killer Instinct was amazing for it. Killer Instinct really kind of broke through the lie that fighting games can't play well online.
Yeah.
Right?
It set the bar.
It set the bar. Street Fighter 4's was not perfect for that time. It was immaculate for the time. And then here comes Mortal Kombat. And MKX's netcode was just as abysmal as Justice's. It was terrible.
I remember.
It was
It's just like dragging your face through glass playing that game.
it was terrible. And yet if you were to bring up to the community, this game is terrible, right then and there they should have just said, this is unacceptable. You're a Warner Brothers product. The online is this bad. And no, if you talked about the online, they would get on you. Yomi, for example, was dominating. They had such a big advantage because not only were they incredibly skilled, they're playing offline first to 100 million in every matchup. Meanwhile, everyone else is playing first to 5 online in the worst conditions imaginable.
Yeah.
There's no way you're gonna match that.
But why would the community come at you for saying that the online is poor? Because surely pointing that out would mean that NRS would provide us with a better game. I don't.
It's not even just me. I was one of the big catalysts of it, and I was a major streamer at that time.
Yeah.
But it was mainly seen as you're making excuses. Well, Foxy seems to play online just fine. I said, I don't care who plays online just fine. The point isn't if you think somebody can do it or not.
Yeah.
The point of the matter is it's unacceptable for your money. And this is a Warner Brothers product. The technology is there. No. And eventually people started to complain about it. But I think people have very fond memories of games that had abysmal netcode. Nobody even mentions MKX.
Yeah.
MKX's netcode was abysmal when it started. Completely unacceptable. And then the first tournament, the first major was Combo Breaker. They patched the game while people were on the plane. Now, Ice Clone was one of them, and of course people will always digress to that point while Tom's upset about the Ice Clone. Not about that at all. You patch a game before a major tournament, which clearly lets you know that the developers believe there is an issue, there are several issues that have to be fixed, right? Otherwise you would never patch a game tournament weekend, right?
Yeah.
And they do not patch out a few block infinites. And I'll never forget MIT doing Raiden's block infinite on Kenshi. And you couldn't even take the hit because if you trade, Raiden gets a full combo.
And they were aware that this was in the game.
They were aware of it. And Pig of the Hut, on the stage, I believe this was in top 24, trying to get into top 16 winners, turns to like the NRS dev team and says, and yells, "What am I supposed to do?" And the crowd laughed, right? And it's like, funny moment. If that happened in Street Fighter or Tekken, though, that studio would be massacred. But it was swept under the rug. For one, how do you patch a game, tournament weekend, and leave a block infinite that not only was it in the game, your guy who was a tester up to a week and a half before the tournament used it to win.
Did they code it in the same fashion they did MK9, where you were saying it was very primitive design?
No. So they could have easily changed it. And then they patched it after the tournament. And I'm like, but
Did they
either don't
explain
patch.
why?
No. I was like, either don't patch anything before the tournament, or if you're going to patch before the tournament, make sure you patch that out too.
Yeah.
It's just the optics of it would be very bad today if that happened. But at that point, it was swept under the rug. And I'm not trying to throw shade at the guy who made it, who won the tournament, because ultimately, no matter what people try to say about those guys there, they do not have executive power. You know, they don't get to tell the designers what gets changed, what doesn't get changed. That is the designer's problem. If you're putting the blame on a tester, realize the limited power they have. Because they don't listen, they didn't listen to us as guest testers. I highly doubt they listen to them as permanent testers. But at the end of the day, it's just a bad look, and it doesn't matter, swept under the rug. From that point forward, MKX had a ton of things that would be laughable. They decided to buff Kung Lao, and they did so by making his orbiting hat, which is a launcher, the EX orbiting hat, plus 27 on block.
Oh, I remember that. That was one of the dumbest things I'd ever seen. I think there was only one other thing that made me cringe even more. I think it was Tanya. I can't remember correctly, but it was one of the two.
Yes, it was. But plus 20, it's like, and it was so much that if you had 3 bars, you could build 5, right? Because you do the whole string and whatever. So by the time all that's done, it's 20% on block.
Yeah.
If you get hit, it's combo. But it's like, wow. They make this of all the interesting things they could have done. Keep in mind, there wasn't even a need for a variation system. Of all the different ways they could have buffed a character, they said, let's take a launcher and let's make it plus 27.
Well, that kind of gives credence to the fact that they have no idea how to balance characters.
I mean, they could have made, it wasn't even the fact that it was jailed. It's that they could have made it plus 15, it would have still jailed.
Yeah.
Why 27? They wanted to make sure even a moron could do it. Which, again, goes hand in hand with one of the biggest problems NRS has, right? They later made several patches in the game. Bone Shaper Shinnok, they took his EX Fireball. The reason why Bone Shaper Shinnok was, the EX Fireball was a generic move, all plus 26. First of all, Shinnok players said Shinnok needed some help. What did NRS do to help him? Oh, we'll just give him a 50-50. The easiest answer you can do in a fighting game, NRS's answer has always been, give someone an overhead, give someone a low, or give someone an unblockable.
Yeah.
The 3 easiest fixes you can possibly do. NRS will always and has always done the least amount possible. So they gave Shinnok an overhead, a low, and they made his sparks plus 26, because at least it's not plus 27. What this meant is Bone Shaper Shinnok could now zone you. If you try to approach him, he can check you with a 3/4 screen plus frame launcher. That was meter burns, cost a bar. And if you tried to zone him back, he had a full screen armored launcher.
Yeah, I remember that.
So you couldn't zone him, you couldn't approach him. What NRS, their balancing philosophy is, and I want everyone at home to understand this, what they have done, what they normally do is, they will take a very good character, remove everything that makes them good, but not give them anything to compensate to make them, I guess, a little more manageable, but still good, but still creative, right? Then they will take a bad character, buff everything that was bad about them, but not give them any weakness. So now their strengths are their strengths, and what their weaknesses are their strengths. Melina was a great example in MKX. Originally, people said she needed to play a certain way, and it was kind of like, if you look at her, she was never about what she does to you, it's what you cannot do to her. She had a great defensive archetype.
Yeah.
But then they gave her better offense, and it's like, not only could you not jump at her, it was tough to approach her, she rolled under fireballs, all this stuff. Now she crushes you in close on top of that. So it was just, people just not, NRS just doesn't understand. And I know some people will say, well, they listen to people. Fighting game developers need to know what to listen to and what not to listen to, right? They should have a mind to understand fighting games. There's an old saying in sports as a coach that say if you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting next to them. You know, it's like it's the same thing as a developer. You
Yeah.
have to understand the concept of fighting games to know what is legitimate and what is a problem, right? And I just don't think they have a good understanding of it. The Tanya is another example. They patched the game before CEO. I remember I spoke to Ed Boon. He said, "Who do you think is going to win?" I said, "Somebody playing Tanya. I expect to see 8 of them in top 8."
Yeah.
And he laughed like I was being ridiculous. And there were 6 of them. Jabali comes up to me and said, I may just start banning NRS DLC characters. Like, when they do one, like, and they patched the game a couple of days before the tournament. I think it was the Friday before, and people were up in arms about it because
Yeah.
they changed something about Cassie Cage 2 or whatever. But their defense was, we did it because we didn't want to see 8 Tanyas in top 8. And we saw 6. So they don't even know what to patch. And the NRS community is just as dumb because you had notable high level players on the forum saying, Tanya's just different. You don't know how to fight her. You have to do this, you have to do that. And then after the CEO debacle, all of them said, well, yeah, she should definitely be nerfed.
Why do you
They
think it
make,
is that they make excuses in the Mortal
I'll
Kombat
tell you
community?
why. I saw this in testing in MKX. Denzel Terry. It was an honor to play against Denzel Terry in MK9 in the Sub-Zero mirror, first of all.
Yeah.
Because win or loss, I was overwhelmed by how fast he moved. It was immediately I had tremendous respect. I always had respect for him, but right then I was like, this is one of the best players I have ever fought against in my life. In
Who is
any
he
game.
using?
We did the Sub-Zero mirror, but he was
Okay.
forced into that because the community made us do a stupid money match. And Denzel even said we didn't care who won or lost. The community wanted us to play for money, so we did it for show, right?
Yeah.
But he would have played a different match. But just feeling him play, I'm going, this is one of the best players I've ever fought. Sometimes you can just feel when someone has tremendous skill, right? And how they move, their decision making. And I was like, this is one of the hands down best players I've ever played. And we were testing in MKX. And I would talk to people like Denzel, and he didn't really want to speak up because he was worried that he would be seen as crying and complaining. So
And
the
that was
MK,
because of the community.
yeah. So I'm like, no, it's okay. We're a test. It's okay to say in this small room something is stupid,
Yeah.
and whatever. But the community very early on put this label on people that if you speak up about something stupid, that you're just crying and complaining about it. There are people that talked about Tanya on the forums and everything, but some of the most high level players would come in and say she's just different, she's okay. Denzel's laughing because he knows one of those people are his brother, MIT, right?
Yeah.
And she was, but the problem was obvious, but nothing got done about it, and then whatever. And it just didn't help the problem that, again, to your point, the same idiots that will say to Sikander, well, you should have labbed. You should have known the overhead wouldn't have hit, right? It's like, but that's not the point. The point is this is unacceptable. You don't lab for a situation like this, right?
Yeah.
The Tanya situation was just something where sometimes you couldn't hit her because of her teleport. She just had way too much. And it wasn't, NRS, they're too extreme. They went from a game where everybody was powerful and then sometimes a little too much power to now where 1 or 2 characters have power and that's mediocre and the rest of them are watered down. They've never found that balance, of what to do.
I
But
think that's because they fundamentally just do not understand how to distribute power across the roster. I don't think they understand balance at all. I think every single thing that has been good competitively about Mortal Kombat has been an accident. I honestly believe that. I don't believe they've done anything on purpose. I think all the mess ups, they don't know they do them, and I think when they do something right, it's by accident.
Yeah, and they created the variation system to get rid of counterpicking, but it still caused counterpick problems, not understanding that you're being more limiting
Yeah.
than helping. And then they put some injustice features like the ability to jump off stuff. So still, some stages became counterpicks. So they create problems that they're trying to fix in different ways. Like they just don't seem to understand. Um,
Well,
and
given
but
that they've created this massive problem with Mortal Kombat 1 now, what do you think they're going to do to this game or going forward?
So the issue with Mortal Kombat 1 is that there's too much to do in a very short period of time. There's too much wrong with the game.
Yeah.
If I look at Mortal Kombat 1 right now, just to make the game a complete product, right? Tier list aside, power aside, just so it's a completed game, right? I would look at they would have to look at invasions and say, this is just something we slapped in there. It's described when Maximilian described it as brutal.
Yeah.
So you need to look at invasions and say, okay, we need to redesign this to either be fun or put something in its place, right? 100% they need to do that with invasions.
Yeah.
The towers, I don't know. I mean, I don't even, that's just to me, they just threw it in because it was the easiest thing to do. I feel like they just threw towers in. If they want to throw in towers in, there needs to be like daily rewards for it.
Yeah.
I think people would want to play it. Like they want to come back every day and check. Um, the customization. So the difference between a game like Street Fighter that you select a pre-selected skin in Mortal Kombat is Mortal Kombat has a customize option, right? Much like Tekken.
Yeah.
But when I go in to customize my character, I can only choose one item, right? Even in MK11, you had multiple items you can choose from, right, to customize. And I have basically palette swaps of the same type of skin, right?
Yeah.
And or it'll be a different skin, not very good, but they all have the same palette swap colors, right? So so every skin has the same color schemes, and I can't individually color what I want. I can't individually add or take items. It's just I get, one item for an accessory, and I get to choose a palette and a color. So it's very limiting as far as customization. So they need to actually give you a customized mode.
Yeah.
The same thing
Goes
for the
back to
cameo.
player expression.
Yes. The reason why everybody looks the same is because everybody pays $10 for a skin,
Yeah.
right? And because those are supposedly the good ones. And sometimes it feels like they intentionally gave you the garbage skins for free and gave you lack of customizable options so that you will pay $10 for a skin. And it feels that way. So they would need to actually give you a better customizable mode as opposed to one that looks like it's only there to frustrate you into spending money so your character looks a little cooler. Then they need to look at the shrine. The shrine is one of the most flawed things for a couple of reasons. One, anything they sell you can also be found in the shrine.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you this right away. So there have been some people who have bought items and other people got them for free in the shrine. Now, and which makes NRS then put the item on discount, which doesn't matter because you're selling items that can be a locked-in shrine, this and that. And shrine should just be able to, I should be able to pull up my rewards for all the characters and say, okay, well, I'm a Kenshi player. I only want these skins for these things for Kenshi, and I don't want to do it anymore, right? So this way, you don't spend your time hitting X for an hour and getting nothing you want. You can get what you want, spend your gold, and go right back into the gameplay.
Yeah, they made Shrine one of the most infuriating processes. I mean, it's bad enough that it's not instant. You have to sit there watching the dragon melt the coins to then just get something that you don't want. And it just felt it. Whenever I turn on games, I want to like have a good time, and it really feels like NRS is trying to push me away from their game. Like everything they do is to like send me somewhere else, whether it's the store being overpriced, or the constant RNG, or invasions. I don't know what they were smoking when they put invasions together. What I don't understand is that they already had mini games that people were saying, "Oh, bring this back, bring this back." Like people were saying, "Bring Tekken Ball back," so they brought it back, and all they could have just redone the combat cart or whatever it was called, or the chess combat, and people would have been happy. But instead, it's like they recreated the Deadly Alliance Conquest mode, and somehow made it more painful because it wasn't very good in Deadly Alliance as well.
No, not at all. So the funny thing about the skins is And again, this is when the community, whatever. So I paid $10 for the Sub-Zero Deadly Alliance skin, for example, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Deadly Alliance skin.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like, they
heard. Yeah.
didn't, it doesn't have the medallion, doesn't whatever. And then the ice clone is bugged to be the anorexic ice clone. And people were like, well, who cares, whatever. And I'm like, you can't charge somebody $10 and then the artwork is bugged on one of the moves.
Yeah.
Like this is not a free skin. You charged me $10.
Which is a
Or you,
ridiculous amount.
if it was $3.99, maybe I'd let it slide. They'll go back in and fix it. You charged me $10 for one skin. And the difference between Tekken and Mortal Kombat is a Tekken skin is $3.99, and I can customize the colors on my own.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat is charging you $10 behind the justification of, well, you're really getting like 7 skins. They're all different colors. I should be able to change the colors on my own, not have to pay $10 to have preset colors you gave me. It's a complete ripoff.
Yeah.
They would need to fix the customized mode as well, like that. Then on the online menu, first and foremost, the online has got to be at least as good as Tekken's. At least as good as Tekken's.
Yeah.
The input delay is terrible. I have had so many pings in NRS games of 100 plus. It's very common. In Tekken, it's rare that I have a ping of 100 for the most part.
My experience has been very positive on Tekken so far, apart from pluggers and rage quitters.
For progress, of course. Combat League, first of all. Like every game, you have to select your character before you go into the fight. However, there's no individual character rankings. So let's say there are 25 characters, 26 characters. It requires you to create 25 or 26 PSNs. Absolutely obnoxious.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Do that, right? So they took an idea that their competitors do, but didn't take the whole idea behind it, right? The whole idea is if you are an Elder God with one character, you might say, well, I'm trying to learn a new character. I am not as familiar with them. I don't want to start at Elder God. I want to work my way up as I get better with the character, right?
Yeah.
No, if one character is Elder God, they're all Elder God. The next thing is they need to look at Tekken's ranking system. There are a lot of ranks.
Yeah.
Shark-infested waters, to quote you. They need to expand on their ranking system. It's like the game, too shallow.
Yeah.
Now, some
It's
people
the
may say
same
that's
thing in
nitpicky.
MK11
Yeah.
as well. The exact
Yeah,
same thing.
it's just too shallow. I think they need to expand upon it and make it. Ranking up is fun in Tekken. For many reasons in Mortal Kombat, it's not fun. Mainly because it's just the same old blah blah repetitive process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The ranking system is not fun to go through. The online experience, everything about it is bad. The whole online experience is bad with Combat League and everything. And then the fact that you have to make 25 PSNs it just adds to it. So definitely the net code to be more acceptable. Then they need to put in a true ping filter. Because right now, it's not like if you go in Tekken, I can decide, do I want to play any rank? Do I want +2, +3, whatever it is? Do I want 4-bar, 5-bar? And then it will feed me the connections that I have selected, rather than every connection comes to me and I have to decline everyone individually, right? The next thing is I find Tekken's thing is accurate. If I see Wi-Fi 3 bars, I already know what it's going to be, right? Mortal Kombat will tell you it's one thing, the ping is one thing, then get in the game and it's twice as high. It doesn't have a real-time ping indicator. So it only tells what their ping is in connecting to their server, not in connecting to you. So they need a real connection filter. The information needs to be accurate. This way also, and then they need to change how it interacts with the system's interface. Because right now you can cherry pick who you fight against.
Yeah.
By, look, as soon as the thing comes up, you can go into the dashboard, see who you're fighting. Oh, I don't want to play that guy. Whether because you think he'll beat you, or, oh, I beat him and I teabagged him, but it was close. He might get me, so I don't want to play him anymore.
Yeah.
So things like that. And they need to do all those things within the ranking system. And also the online practice has to be put into the game. And the online practice needs to be added to, it's not even in the game, so they can't add it to your queue if it's not even in the game. So one, they have to put it in the game, and then I have to add it to be able to be queued into.
This sounds like a lot of resources.
I don't know what Warrior Shrine is. The funny thing is nobody even cares anymore.
Yeah.
Whether they put it in or not, I guess they should put it in, obviously. But then there's King of the Hill. They would need to go to King of the Hill and change the way that happens. Tournaments are run on King of the Hill, obviously, because somebody has to stream them. Online tournaments have become the new locals, right? So you need to be able to run, those are the cornerstones of your scene. People use the ranking mode to feel confident enough to get hone their skills to play online tournaments. And then online tournaments, the smaller ones, make people confident enough to join the bigger online tournaments, and then that gives you the confidence to join the offline tournaments. It's a river that kind of flows into the ocean, or an ocean, I guess, that flows into a river, I should say.
Yeah.
Also, rank needs to go back to 3 out of 5.
Oh yeah, 100%. That was a really stupid change.
And the problem was, again, Ed Boon did what I call a straw man poll. Nobody was asking for rank to be 3 out of 5. He put a poll up and he said, "Do you want connection filter, crossplay, all these things, rank to be 2 out of 3?" He put that in there because they knew what was already done. And then they could do a combat cast. It was the least possible thing. They created a straw man option that nobody really asked for. And then to say, "Hey, we're listening to you, we did it." Also, their justification was people were asking for 2 out of 3. Again, another half truth. People were asking for 2 out of 3 because they knew fixing the netcode was out of the option. So they were saying, at least not let me be stuck in these bad netcodes for 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
The answer would be to fix the netcode, not to make rank 2 out of 3 so people will complain about the connection less because they're not stuck in it as much. They chose a very bootleg and did a very disingenuous way of slipping that to the community as, "We're listening to you." And then for Tyler Lansdowne to come on the Combat Cast and said, "Oh, by the way, we made Combat League 2 out of 3 so you can play a few more matches on your lunch break." Well, that's what casual game is for. You already have a mode for that. The
Yeah.
competitive mode is to make it 2 out of 3, especially when a game is new and people are obviously going to win with gimmicks and new characters are going to continue to be added. You completely destroy the competitive spirit. You know how many people were being reverse 3-0'd, and this was good outside of the crappy connections, and they just, they kind of shot that in the foot.
Yeah, I completely. It was so weird to me because I think I made this point on one of my videos is that the trailers for Mortal Kombat always get millions of views, but Combat Cast always gets like a couple thousand, and so it's very obvious who's watching. So when they made that change and announced it on Combat Cast, I was like, who are you talking to here? Because the people that watch Combat Cast don't want this change, and it's also something that I hate that they've done with Tekken. Having 2 out of 3 on Tekken is even worse in my opinion.
And
But
the fact that you can play one and done is also irritating.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I obviously I've had my take on the channel about it, and I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with it. But at the end of the day, the talking point for these people is that it's not that deep. If people want to do one and done, let them be. But it is that deep enough for you to leave to protect your points. If you didn't care, you would just play, right? Otherwise, you'd go into
You just
casual.
play quick match. You could just say, "I'll play one game. I may not have time. I may have to leave. So I'll
Exactly.
just play quick match. So if I have to leave after one, it's no big deal."
Yeah, you care about protecting your points as much as I care about taking them or wanting to understand the matchup. And I don't mind people having their opinions. I just think it's a little bit of a cop out when they pretend like it's not serious enough that they have to go and protect their points. Because we know 9 times out of 10, people are not going because a volcano's erupted or their dogs spilt water all over them or some BS excuse. And so with the change that they made, both in Tekken and Mortal Kombat, I dislike it a lot. I think it kind of takes away from the competitive players. But the thing with Mortal Kombat is that they announced it on the Combat Cast, and I was like, who are you talking to right now? It's surely not us watching, because the people watching are the competitive players, and nobody wants this.
Nobody wants it. 100%. Nobody wanted it. And it was just something that it just kills the competitive nature of the whole level up process. The King of the Hill is kind of wild to me because the way it's done. So normally King of the Hills are an individual server, some type of central server, right? But Mortal Kombat's King of the Hill is you're connected to the host.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is the two players connected to the host, if one player lives closer to the host, that one player will have significantly less rollback, significantly less significantly less input delay, things of that nature. And the issue with this is that you're having a tournament in which how many times have we seen King of the Hill? Oh, let's change the king, let's change the lobby. These people can't connect, or the connection is bad. It's automatically an unfair environment, despite the normal online, because one player is going to have an inherent advantage over the other. There's also no forever king move. They would need to add that.
Yeah.
The next thing is there are no lobbies, which we assume they'll be there with crossplay. But I don't know that NetherRealm will do crossplay properly. You can't just put in crossplay. Crossplay must be done properly because if these people cannot play in tournaments, then what's the point? You know, crossplay needs to not just be lobby. You need to be able to play ranked under crossplay as well. Segregating them to a lobby doesn't help anything. They need to integrate it so crossplay can be part of ranked, which the rumor is that they have not done that. That will not be the case. And put that in the connection filter to where you can turn crossplay on or off, but the option should be there. They also need to make it so crossplay can happen in King of the Hill so that these players across PC, Xbox, and PS5 can all play together in tournaments.
Have they given a justification as to why they're not doing it?
We're not sure if they are or not, but I don't believe they are.
Okay.
And it's definitely not part of ranked. It should be, but I don't think they can integrate into ranked. They should all be able to integrate into ranked, quick match, casual match. Crossplay should not be limited to a lobby. Whether you can King of the Hill that lobby or not, it shouldn't just be limited to that as the only way, you know? And then there's, I mean, there's obviously practice, coming soon. We talked about that has to come back. These are really all these things that have to happen for the game to feel like at least you have bought a complete purchase. That alone sounds like it's monumental.
Yeah, it sounds like a whole new game.
And even if they did that, no one would care because the main problem is even if they made the game more playable, people don't want to play the game as it is. That's why people don't travel offline for it either.
Yeah.
People don't like the game in its current state. And this is really where NRS, again, the rumor that they're going to add a tag mode, I don't find that even possible. They don't even have time to build their full game. They don't even have time to change the already established characters to be a little more powerful and a little better and a little more fun. But they're going to design a whole new roster of now everyone has a normal, more specials, combos. There's no way they have time to build a whole nother roster for a tag mode.
Yeah, there's no way that's going to happen. If that did happen, it would be the most half-assed. It would probably cause more problems. I can't
100%.
imagine that being the case. There's no way. If they produced this in the time they had, and there's another update, are they saying that this is all going to drop with Peacemaker?
No. We think it's just going to be crossplay and Peacemaker. And there's just no possible way they can do enough.
Yeah, no, the game's finished. I said in one of my latest videos that I think that they should just pull support for this game and throw all their resources into the next one. And I know from a business side you can't do that, so I'm speaking like ideally, but I think they should take their lessons from this one and actually listen to the community, because as far as I can remember, a lot of people have been asking for tag anyway. Like, tag was a big thing, so I don't know why they went the cameo route anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't know either. And the cameo just seems like another gimmick. In MK11, that variation system was a huge gimmick. It was a complete letdown. 2 variations to start. They added a third. The custom variation was anything but. When you go to customize your Melina and you say, well, I want to equip a high psi and a low psi, and the game says, well, you can't do that because they're the same command. Yeah. They clearly did not have the ability to customize the game in mind. So only NRS could design the option to do a customized variation system without thinking about making it a customizable variation system. Just restrictions and conflictions that should never happen.
Yeah, I remember like wanting to customize my noob cybot a certain way, but I think if you put some moves on, it takes up more slots, so you had to sacrifice other ones. And I was like, because there was a move that noob cybot had where he would sort of jump in the air and throw his scythe, and then he'd teleport. Yes. And I loved using that, but I couldn't use that if I wanted to use like the low clone, I think, or the ghost ball, or whatever. And I was just like, well, I can't really play Noob Saibot the way I want, so it's not real customization.
No, and the irony was probably the most powerful moves in the game, like Jackie's Leap, things like that, were one bar.
Yeah,
Were one slot. They never went back and reslotted. They never even changed the commands so that move, for Melina to have a high and low side, that's normal. You should be able to equip that to customize your character. And they just said, no, they both the same command because we didn't actually intend for you to customize, but it's the least we could do. The most upsetting thing about MK1 is they even, after antagonizing its scene, Ed Boon did, showing he has no clue on the pulse of the game. They then tried to say, well, we're not going to change the game anymore. There's no more content coming. But what we are going to do is start working on MK1. So everybody was like, okay, well, at least more development time is better.
yeah,
And it came out this disaster. The next worst thing about all this is the people that defended so many issues here with MK11 the whole time. It was clearly an incomplete game. They called it the best Mortal Kombat of all time. Like you said, people vote with their wallets. Tekken changed because Namco voiced they were very displeased with Harada with Tekken Tag 2, right?
yeah,
If your wallet says you love it, but your voice says you don't love it, they don't care because they are in business to make money. When they saw, okay, people are not happy, then they began to go a different route with Tekken. And they found they didn't scrap everything because they realized if we perfect our system and give something for everyone, simplify the game in some areas, throws, for example.
yeah,
You can break any standard throw, one break or two break with one or two. But if it's a command throw with one or two, you have to see the hands.
yeah.
Keeps the complexity while still simplifying, right? It gives things like power crush so that you think like I'm not stuck blocking here, but there's a way to bait them, way to step them, way to read them, way to punish them, right? There are things you can do. So it gives people the feel like they have more options in certain situations while still giving a high level route around it. And they found the perfect balance. They truly found the perfect balance. Most people have to understand those people and Mortal Kombat, they would beat on top of a mountain. It sells more. It sells. It sells. It sells.
Well, that's out the window now.
Yeah. And now that it's not selling, now they're talking about, well, it's still one of the top 100 games that are played. So at the end of the day, NRS has had the luxury of having a lot of excuses.
Yeah, but it also shows that how much Harada and Namco understand their game. That
And their community.
Yeah, that they saw Tekken Tag 2. Because I still think Tekken Tag 2
Harada
is
played in Evo. He played a Tekken set at Evo.
Yeah.
It shows he knows how to play his own game.
Yeah, he knows how to play his own game. And I love Tekken Tag 2. I think it's it's probably my second favorite Tekken game after this one. And it was clear that there was something special there, but they kind of missed the mark. And it was a bit too crazy for casuals. And to see what they did with Tekken 7, which didn't have the biggest budget, but they understood that aesthetically some things had to change, and they brought Akuma in, which was massive, and they kind of made a few gameplay tweaks, like you said, here and there, and a lot of people felt a lot more welcoming, and they also maintained a large roster, so people had the pick of the litter, which I find Street Fighter does this as well. I don't know why. And Mortal Kombat, where they both start off with very small rosters, even though they have hundreds of characters to choose from. And I've never understand why they do it, because Smash Brothers and Tekken always kick it off with a big roster, and people are always like excited to play with loads of characters. And I don't think the excuse of I have to learn loads of matchups really sticks, because the game tends to become stale. Like, for as much praise as Street Fighter 6 has had, I have heard a lot of people saying it's a bit stale, like it's the same shit over and over again. I don't think that would have happened if it had a bigger roster.
No, I don't think so either. I think when it comes to Tekken, what the problem with Tag 2 was, you need to not just take care of the high level player, but it also needs to be welcoming from a new player who doesn't know how to play the game.
Yeah.
I think Tekken 8 is the first fighting game that has finally found the sweet spot of that.
Yeah, definitely.
I believe in Tag 2, like, think how overwhelmed people are coming into Tekken 8 for the first time, learning one character. Imagine if they had to learn two simultaneously.
Yeah,
Like it's
Tekken
just
Tag 2.
it's overwhelming for a newer player.
Yeah, and Tag 2 was extremely unforgiving. Like, if you made a single mistake, you were being launched straight into the wall. And even though that still happens now in Tekken 8, you were basically dead. Once, when someone launched you in Tekken 8, you were finished. And you would wake up into a really shit situation. And the mechanics, there was no, like, power crush or any of those sort of things to help newcomers at all. So, I remember playing, and I played Jinpachi, who was already a character people hated. And I remember
Mhm.
playing people that were unfamiliar with Tekken, and if Jinpachi knocks you down, you're finished. There's no
Yeah.
way. There's no way to
It,
deal with him.
I think Tekken Tag 2 was made for people who already knew how to play Tekken 6.
Yeah,
And it
definitely.
didn't take into account the casual audience. And I think Harada realized we can make things for the high level player while also keeping things fun and entertaining for the casual.
Yeah,
And then I really feel like it's like, well, these other games, what do they have that we don't? And they beefed up the story mode. They have Tekken Ball mode, the jukebox. There's so many things that you can do. No two Tekken 8s are the same, right? Different music,
yeah,
your skins are different, everything is different. It's a completely customized experience even before you ever actually get into the gameplay.
yeah, definitely.
I think the gameplay also, there's been this notion that NRS is appealing to the casuals only because the casuals don't want to deal with certain things. And we see that it's probably more along the lines of the high level players don't want to deal with the more annoying things
Yeah,
because I really think that in Tekken that shows that first of all, I don't even know where that came from. Look, the thing is people complain, right? Fighting games are frustrating. That's why they're the smallest of all the competitive audience. They're frustrating. It's a one-on-one game, and there's no one to blame but yourself. You can't blame your teammate. You can't whatever.
yeah,
So it takes a very special person to lose constantly and have that loss motivate them to come back and grind harder. For most people, losing discourages them, right?
yeah,
To not want to continue. But people that love fighting games, losing encourages them to keep going and keep going and keep going. That's why fighting games are some of the hardest to get into. You have to get over that discouragement when you're learning something new.
I do
I feel
think that
that,
like you
yeah,
need to have a game that you want to come back to, because it got to the point for me on Mortal Kombat 11, for example, where I would lose to like Cetrion, for example, and I would be like, I don't want to play this. Whereas on Tekken 8, I was just playing just now. I've just got into Raijin rank, and I was one win away from going up to, I think it's Kishin or Bushin,
mhm.
and I lost to this Dragunov player by my own stupid mistake. And I was so angry. Like, I had to turn it off because I was coming here to talk to you, and I was really pissed off. But
Yeah.
I sat here and I was like, well, I know what I did wrong. I killed myself in that situation. And I want to turn it back on and learn from my mistake. And I think Tekken offers loads of options and loads of way for you to understand where you went wrong. But when you're playing Mortal Kombat, I genuinely think there's some things where it's just like, no, the game just fucked you over. There wasn't really much you could do there. And one thing I've hated about Mortal Kombat, and I'll never understand why they do this, is I'll never understand why fireballs pass through each other. That has that has perplexed me for years. And every time I ask people, I don't really ever get a straight answer. It's just, oh, this is an NRS thing. But it doesn't really make any sense. I remember when I used to fight against Cetrion, and she's there throwing boulders at me, and I'm like, this would be a much more enjoyable experience if I could play a fireball wall and outsmart my opponent. But I can't. If I throw a fireball and she throws it, she wins. And now I'm knocked down, and now she's just raining fireballs on me. And it's just a bit like, I don't want to come back to that. There's nothing in there that makes me want to come back to it.
So you said a couple of points there, and I remember a video you referenced, and I didn't want to bring that up to you. First thing about you losing a Dragunov. So what character do you play?
Feng Wei.
Fang. Dragunov is considered one of the top two or three characters by many people, right? I believe he's considered one of
I
them.
think he's the best character personally.
Okay, so he's powerful.
Very.
Okay, but that doesn't discourage you from coming back and playing. You say, even though he's a powerful character, he's a better character. I know where I fucked up, and I know what I can do next time, right?
Yeah, he's very oppressive, but there are ways around the things that he does that sort of corny. Like his forward two is extremely oppressive,
Extremely,
but
yes.
you can sidestep it into the foreground, I believe. and
Hmm.
you take his back and you can basically do like 60% on him. It's just a case of training your nerves because when Dragunov is in your face, you're immediately like, oh, I should stand still because he's plus on a lot of things.
Hmm.
But the game is complex enough for me to understand. When I look it back, I'm like, okay, that was entirely my fault. Like I should have actually won the round, but for whatever reason, I froze up and he punished me, and I was like, okay, I can come back and I can do something here, even though he's the best character.
Yes. And giving all characters power or giving fighting games are frustrating. We want to overcome things.
Yeah,
So even if we're playing against something that can be oppressive or something that is stronger than the character we have, it is believed that NRS does this stuff because nobody wants to deal with it. But in Tekken, we show not only are people are dealing with it, that game is selling more than MK1 right now, and Harada's basically like give them all power,
yeah,
and you're not discouraged by that power, right? You're not saying, "Oh my God, Dragunov, that's such bullshit. He's the best character, plus on everything. I gotta know when to step." You're like, okay, even though he's better than my character and he's more oppressive, I could have done this, I could have done this, I could have this, and I could have killed him, and I froze.
yeah,
And that encourages you to play. You're not discouraged. And the MK community has believed for the longest time, let NRS off the hook. Well, they do this, they water everything down, they take things out of the game, archetypes out of the game, because, nobody wants to deal with that. If that was the case, Tekken 8 would be the lowest selling game right now on the market.
yeah, definitely.
And people love the power. They're excited, all this stuff to learn and to lab, etc. Now, on the Mortal Kombat stuff, as you mentioned, Mortal Kombat has failed to update its game to modern times. Mortal Kombat, for example, throws. So for one, in MK9, throws were this way because the game was not as watered down. There was so much more you could do than just throw. This game is strike throw is a big part because the game is extremely watered down.
Yeah,
However, it makes no sense if you are a player that understands fighting games and you come to Mortal Kombat and you go to tech a throw, you understand that in trying to tech this throw, I'm already opening myself up to risk, right? Because if it's a strike, a quick strike, or a quick jab string, I think it's a throw. I go to tech, I get comboed. So when you go to take the throw, you realize I made the right read. I opened myself up to risk, still made the right read, knew it was a throw, and I got thrown anyway.
yeah,
So it just makes it just. So I took all the risk in the world to tech this, and he still threw me.
yeah. It's luck. It waters down competitive games. I am literally guessing. I mean, you already guess when you're going for the tech, like you said, but then you see it, and in Street Fight, even in Injustice, I believe it's one button tech and they push you away. But for whatever reason, in Mortal Kombat, you see the throw coming and you try to tech it, but you guess the wrong way, even though there's no visual indicator whatsoever. And MK11 took it one step further and put the escape fail thing on it. And if you guess wrong twice, you lose 30%. And I was just like, are they stupid or something?
Yeah, I feel like in Mortal Kombat, to the projectiles now, I feel like there's two trains of thought here. I feel like some of this comes down to preference, right? Because if you're an MK guy, that you've always dealt with that, and some people have not played Street Fighter. Like I'm old, so I played Street Fighter 2 World Warrior. Like I'm old. I played Street Fighter 2 World Warrior, Guile. I was a kid. I'm not trying to say that I was like good or anything, but in my arcade, I crushed people, and I had no conscience of what I was doing was unfair.
Yeah,
It was, but the way fireballs worked has always been that way until Mortal Kombat. But MK came around kind of early as well. So from a very early point, if you played Street Fighter, you were used to this, and you played Mortal Kombat, you were used to that. A lot of people didn't play both MK and Street Fighter at that point. Uh, and I feel like that might have been acceptable for the arcade era. But as NRS moved into the modern era, I feel like there was an opportunity there for something. I feel like zoning could be go back to being a little more oppressive if projectiles traded and they wouldn't have to worry about people running into them.
yeah,
Fireball wars are a skill set. It's a strength of some players. Um, I feel like there's some like Sub-Zero, for example. Regular ice ball could trade with a regular fireball. and then they could make the EX fireball significantly faster and have it go through the fireball and freeze you, right?
Yeah.
For example. They could have, but then they could also take the regular ice ball and make it much, much, much faster because it's no longer going to trade. So I could get it out on the screen fast enough as you're doing something, right? Um, or any character can do this. Shang Tsung with his fireballs, things like that, right? It's 3 fireballs, doesn't cost any bar. It gives them an inherent zoning advantage over someone like Raiko who would only throw like 1 star. And the star should be 1 projectile, not 3. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Um, I think they need to modernize it. I mean, I'm not against how it is now, but if they modernize it, it opens up so many more possibilities. NRS has got to. What
They
I've
they
always said is
they
NRS
could
is
even they could do something different with it though. They don't have to necessarily make it like everybody else's, but they need to add some level of depth to it because right now it's literally just pass through, pass through, pass through.
yeah, just you're doing fireball, fireball, fireball. Yeah, yeah, both people doing
Because
fireball.
because NRS fireballs, some of them they're quite weird in comparison to like Street Fighter. Like you've got boulders and things coming out of the sky and whatever. And I don't mind if they change it up, but I just don't understand why something that is like an energy ball would not crash into something else. It can have all sorts of properties. You can even do a thing where Sub-Zero's fireball, ice ball freezes a fireball in place and do something quirky with that. Like change it up, but just having things pass through each other, it's a bit boring. It shuts down a whole element of gameplay that you could explore. And
Whole
they've been
mind game.
yeah, they've been doing it for ages now. And when I look at other games, even arena fighters do it. Like stupid arena fighters that are put out like Ninja Storm or what even like Tenkaichi, even though that's well loved by people. Tenkaichi 3 has clashes, King of Fighters has clashes, Tekken has clashes. Mortal Kombat is the only one where not only do they not do anything special with their fireballs, they just pass through each other and that's it. I'm just like, at what point? It's like the flip stance thing. I'm just like, when you're coding this game, why is flip stance still there? What is it doing there? Like, do you not check these things to see, oh, maybe we should do something else with this button instead of having the character flip back and forth? It makes no
It's made
sense.
for X-ray. That's why they keep it there, but it's still flip stance, so it's.
Yeah, like that button of them just go like doing that. I'm like, change up the input then. Like, do something else. It's one thing that I think everybody is sort of agreed on. Like, flip stance is the most useless thing anyone's ever seen in a fighting game.
Yeah, they kept it from their 3D era, which I never really did anything.
It's just
Uh,
lazy.
yeah, it's and so the fireball opens up a lot of possibilities. Um, I do think there's something they could do. If not a trade, they could find something else to do with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like first of all, what Mortal Kombat needs to do. So there's a video we watched, and I thought about reacting to it. I'm not sure if you have yet, in which it said that NRS players are not as loyal as Street Fighter players or Tekken players. They always need new content. This was talked about in MK11. People are entitled, all these characters. Why do we leave? Yada, yada, yada. It's because NRS no longer gives them substance. I said NRS has the master of making the home run legal in tennis, where you can hit a ball over the fence and that's now a point.
yeah,
You would initially have an influx of tennis players, right? Because now everybody can play it, but then nobody would want to watch it. The game would be too simple. Nobody would want to play it, and tennis would die. And the tennis players could say, well, they stopped putting money in. If they kept paying us, but where's the money coming from? The crowd isn't there before, the players aren't there anymore. NRS has basically taken tennis and made the home run legal. And they've made it way too simple. And their philosophy has always been it needs to be simple to sell the game. People have defended this logic constantly. And it's not the case. Tekken has pretty much shattered every rumor, every narrative around why Mortal Kombat does what it does. Right?
yeah.
Shattered it completely. Uh, I think they can find their own individual way to do it to add depth to that system. It doesn't have to be like Street Fighter, but they can find their own way to do it.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
perfectly fine with them differentiating themselves from everyone, but I'm not fine with them just lazily leaving plasma to pass through each other. And it's like they understand that fireballs can't clash because they do it with Sub-Zero. There's one of I don't know what move it is, but I think it's this ice clone or what something in Mortal Kombat 1 where
Yeah,
fireballs
yeah.
will
So they have
crash.
projectile immune fire. Yeah, so they do have several things that do that. Yes.
Yeah, so they're aware that it's a thing and they've even implemented it, but they just haven't implemented it across the board. And I'm just like, why? If you were doing a cutscene with Liu Kang and Sub Zero, are you telling me Liu Kang's fireball is gonna go through the ice clone in the or the ice
It would
ball in
also
the
make Shang Tsung such a far better zoner than Liu Kang because now he has three, and Liu Kang's only shooting one.
yeah
It makes him a much better zoner, right? So it automatically would, without beefing up the zoning per se, make characters better zoners. See what I'm
yeah.
saying? So the formula is there. Um,
It also creates a situation where like you say like you've got Street Fighter 4, right, and you've got Sagat and Ryu's got 1 HP and Sagat's got like 10. And he's got Ryu in the corner and you're shooting fireballs and you're shooting fireballs like very precisely and quickly and you're changing up the speeds of light, medium and heavy. And you're like trying to outsmart your opponent so that Ryu can get in and maybe do a punish. But in Mortal Kombat, because fireballs pass through each other, if I'm on 1 HP and I'm using Noob Saibot and you're using Cetrion, for example, or Luke, or in Mortal Kombat 1, if I'm using Liu Kang and you're using Shang Tsung, you're fucked basically. Like you cannot start throwing fireballs with me because the minute you do and the minute I see, I'm just gonna throw mine and we'll trade. But you've got 1 HP, so you're going to lose. And it's just like, don't. Why would they want that to be a situation in their games? It removes the clutch factor.
no, I agree 100%. Um, I think they need to find ways to add depth to the game.
Yeah,
Because right now, even the characters that are good, first of all, when I say add power to the game, the power must have depth. So I say, in my opinion, even if they did everything that I said, nobody would care.
yeah,
If they just fixed the netcode and steroid buffed all the characters and added crossplay, it would add a ton of goodwill because the people would be excited to come. It will never be saved, but it can be slightly salvaged. Um, the first concern is you have to make people want to play the game. You have to ask yourself, if we did all of these things netcode wise, completed product wise, would people want to play the game? And the answer is no, because
yeah.
at the game it is still shallow. Now,
I
what they
think there's
need,
too much damage done, to be honest.
and there probably is. They would need to. Let's take a look at a character like Raiden, for example. Raiden will do full screen Superman into assist, teleport into assist. That's part of an assist game. We all know that, right? But then he does string, low that will crush most mids. If it hits, confirm in a full combo. If it's blocked, storm cell into assist, into pressure. Or say 50-50.
Yeah,
Jailed into pressure. That is so powerful, yet so simple. There's no
it's brain dead.
there's yeah, it's going to get boring and stale very, very quickly. When you look at how some of these characters are, I look at Kung Lao, for example. What were they thinking? They took all of his moves, gave it to the cameo, and then didn't have any moves left for him.
Yeah,
And then still the NRS community says dumb things like, well, he only has a plus armored launcher. A plus armored launcher will take the worst character in the game into top 10 immediately.
yeah,
They don't understand the tiniest thing. They're like, well, they only have this. It's so easy and brain dead to use. It garners so much respect and shuts down so much of the match. Like they severely, and it's just too bland. All that character has is a plus armored launcher. And if you removed it, he has nothing else.
yeah,
Because they gave all his moves to his cameo. So Kung Lao could be a high flyer, he could have teleport, he could have low hat, he could have all these things. No, the cameo has all the moves, so Kung Lao doesn't really have anything. They need to, some characters they need to just completely reinvent. They need to steroid buff the assist, steroid buff the characters, but add depth to it. It can't be the most simple thing anymore.
yeah. They need to add consequences to it as well. Because one thing I find in Mortal Kombat games is that certain characters will be able to do the most oppressive bullshit, and then the
No
consequences
consequence.
for doing it is like a couple HP compared to what you've done to me. Whereas like when we were talking about Dragonov, yeah, he's really annoying to fight. But in almost every situation, there's a way out of it, or there's a way to seriously punish him. You just need to be looking out for them. And it's irritating to be playing a game where you know that your opponent has switched their brain off completely, and no matter how much you engage, because they've designed the character in a way for
The
them to,
tactic is so simple and so
yeah,
powerful and so safe. You know, like Raiden, you're sitting there mashing block after everything because you want to flawless block the storm cell on the first hit or the hit before and not halfway through.
yeah,
So he's just poking and and people are like, oh well, he can just do down one and jump, and then he'll do down one. Even EX Storm Cell, some characters can't punish. It's a launcher, right? And it's still, or they can still call in Kano to make it safe. I mean, like it's the tactics in the game are so simple, yet so power. I mean, the game is so simple that they put Cyrex in the game. Now, the characters play exactly the same with or without Cyrex and what they do.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cyrex it's just to a lesser extent. Like Raiden Storm Cell was a launcher with Cyrex. Now he has to use Goro, but Goro you don't have as many calls as Cyrex did or Kano. So they use Kano so they can call him more. The best ability for an assist is availability.
Yeah,
So but they can still play him similar. What Raiden does is no different. The only thing that has changed is what happens after because you don't have Cyrex there, right? Baraka, same thing with Stryker. They scaled him. He does less damage. They scaled him back a little bit. He has a gap somewhere that he didn't used to have. But it's a similar strategy as Cyrex, only now you're using Stryker.
yeah,
Same thing with Scorpion. You just plug in Stryker instead of Cyrex. It's just it's too simple. And it was so far out that even when they nerfed Cyrex, the character still didn't change.
yeah. And
Because
also, it looks like everybody's doing the same shit over and over again. Like, I couldn't tell you the difference between someone's Baraka and some other player's Baraka. Like, everyone's doing the same shit over and over again.
and it's just becoming very, people don't like watching it. They don't like playing it. And I think at this point, I know some people don't want to say anything. They kind of want to stay quiet about it because they don't want to get on NRS's bad side. But that's kind of the weird thing, if there's even a bad side to get on, because you would think a company would want feedback
Yeah.
on their product. And it just seems like NRS doesn't want that, doesn't welcome it.
Well, how can
People
they be
blame.
so up themselves that they won't accept feedback? That's what I don't understand. If I made a game and everybody was angry at my game, I'd be quite upset about that, because I guess these games are like passion projects for some of these people, and to see everyone so angry at my game, I would want to talk to the community to find out what we can do better next time. Because it's not like they can't bring Mortal Kombat back to a place where everyone's happy, but they need. I always say they need to take their fingers out of their bums and start listening to people. They can't be so up themselves that we can't communicate with them. They've shut down communication on Twitter, basically. Like, I haven't seen Tyler Lansdowne, Ed
True.
Boon, anyone say anything in ages now.
I mean, Peacemaker's supposed to drop, what is it, on Tuesday or something like that? Thursday?
Yeah, and there's been no promotion whatsoever.
And now they're doing it tomorrow for Peacemaker. So Peacemaker drops on Wednesday. So it drops in 1 week for today, and tomorrow they're doing the combat cast on it.
Oh, is
which
the
is
combat
just-
cast tomorrow?
No, it's the trailer tomorrow.
Oh, right, okay.
And they'll probably announce the day of or the day before. Combat cast tomorrow. Which just shows like everything is last minute.
Yeah. Do you think that's because of Warner Brothers, or do you think NRS is just incompetent?
That's them. That they're incompetent. At the end of the day, so Namco is a bigger studio, and so is Capcom, right? They're bigger. Now NRS has Warner Brothers money, which may not be what it was anymore because of Discovery and everything.
Yeah.
But they're a bigger studio. Even Namco has realized, Harada has realized, if I were to take Tekken and scrap everything in the game, rebuild a whole new system, thousands of moves, thousands of new properties, and you gave me 2.5 years, it would be the most incomplete piece of garbage.
Yeah.
So even studios with more manpower realize that doesn't work. And yet Ed Boon and NetherRealm, it's finally caught up to them. They've done it so much, they ran out of good ideas.
Yeah.
and they take every idea that's good and they scrap it. They couldn't find any new ones. They spend so long trying to reinvent the wheel, then putting the new wheel in, that now with there's 6 months left to launch, and we've got to throw in content. How are these characters going to play? How do they get balanced? Is this too strong? Is this not strong enough? It's just, it's not. They just don't have enough time. That's all. Warner Brothers has nothing to do with it. That's all on NRS. Their formula is wrong.
Do you think they're
I
gonna
don't
try
think
and
there's any way to
reinvent the
get
wheel
them.
again?
In my opinion, here's what I would do if I was them. I would love to see MK1 get a massive steroid boost. I just don't know if that's possible. There's just too much to do. And I think if it takes them the year to do it, nobody will care.
Yeah.
If they come out with Injustice next, they will destroy the Mortal Kombat franchise. Unfortunately, they're in a situation where they have really messed up their flagship game. They need to just make a Mortal Kombat game and just say, okay, let's take from our two most successful games, 9 and X,
Yeah.
we're not going to reinvent characters. We're going to use the moves already invented. So let's say we're going to take Melina. We'll give her like her back three from MK9, her 4-2, her up 4 or whatever it is. We'll then give her her forward 1, the little side thing where she goes into crouch, those 3 hits. We'll give her that string. We'll give her back 1-2. So they can do a lot of these things, right? They'll say we'll give her some of her ravenous teleports, not ravenous, whatever that's the ethereal teleports, right?
Yeah.
Give her some of her stuff in ravenous. The moves are already there, right? They are already there. They can take Sub-Zero. They could say give him his 224 from MK9, 212, 214. Give him his MKX forward 4. I wouldn't give him his back 2. I just think 50-50s. I think Scorpion should be the crazy maniac character.
Yeah.
And,
I agree.
and then I would give him maybe give him his 1-2-3 string. Take Kung Lao. They could give Kung Lao his back 3 MKX string, his 1-1-2-1 MK9 string, his 2-4 MK9 string. Give him his some other stuff from MKX, right? They could give him his orbiting hat. Could give him his hat trick, all in one variation, all in one character, right? So they already have moves that they can give the character. I would just take the game, say we're going to combine moves from both of these games. We're not going to reinvent them.
Yeah.
And then is there going to be run? Is there not going to be run? Make a firm decision, right? Your meter system is fine. You don't need to change it. You can put Fatal Blow in, but realize Fatal Blow should probably be unsafe, especially if half of them go full screen. Should be more unsafe. And then kind of build on that. Okay, what do we want to do? Build on those systems. Add systems. Tweak how projectiles work. Tweak how throws work, right? Your anti-airs, how do you want them to be? Do you want up block to stay in the game? If you do, you might want to look into making them a little more unsafe because sometimes somebody can try to do an early up block, and I understand that's a commitment, but I can still land, and they can't. I think it should be more risk for it because it's such an easy anti-air.
Yeah.
And I understand there's baiting and there's risk, but if I look at the risk for up block versus the risk for Dragunov being red for doing a running 2, it's not the same, right? He's always dead. You're not always dead for up block. It's based on when you up block versus where I am in my jump and how fast you recover. I think I don't even know if I would put up block in. I kind of like.
I have a different take on this, like what they should do moving forward.
Sure.
I think that MK1, to me, aesthetically at least, is very reminiscent of MK11, and I think that they've left such a bad taste in people's mouths that the visuals of a fighting game, I think because Street Fighter 6 and Tekken 8 have raised the bar as well, and they've shown that it really does matter, I think that MK1 and MK11 looking very similar, and even the presentation in the fight is very similar. I think they need to, unfortunately, they've backed themselves into a corner where I think that, again, they're going to have to gut the entire game, but this time I think they're going to have to gut everything. Like, not just gameplay mechanics, but the aesthetic of Mortal Kombat needs to change. That goes for the music, the way characters interact with each other. And one thing I hate about Mortal Kombat games is the bodies look so weird when they're interacting. Like, the top half of the body won't be moving, but the legs will. And it looks very inhuman, and I think they need to completely redo the animations. They look very dated and very... It just looks lazy. Like, some animations MK1 got better, but you've got some animations with like low kicks or when they're jumping where it looks like it's completely disjointed. I think that all of those things, considering the fact that there are a lot of eyes on fighting games right now, they need to. Even the sound design is just awful in MK1. It doesn't. I
Terrible.
don't feel like I'm punching somebody, and I should feel like that more in the most violent fighting game. I shouldn't feel like I'm like basically slapping someone very lightly in Mortal Kombat. Whereas in Tekken, when you hit someone, it's like a gun's gone off,
Yeah.
and it feels cool.
Powerful hits feel powerful.
Yeah, it feels cool. Like when I do Feng
Like when you
Wei's.
get hit in Tekken, you don't even have to look at your life bar. You know you got hit by something devastating.
Yeah, it lets you
Yeah.
know you can even tell the way your character's reacting. This is a counter hit. I'm about to take a ton of damage. But when I do Feng Wei's shoulder, when I hit them at certain angles, the characters go flying. That it zooms into the camera, and then the character goes flying across the screen. There's sparks everywhere. The ground is exploding. I feel like, yeah, this feels like a martial arts film. But in Mortal Kombat, where that should be happening more than anything, because it's meant to be the most violent video game, I don't feel like I'm breaking jaws. I feel like I'm slapping people.
No, that's actually always been a complaint of MK. I think MKX might be different. I think the hits felt more impactful in that game. Even
Definitely.
9 was kind of like you would see Shiva do a slap. I remember I was playing with some friends and we were joking. She does this one slap. I forget what the command is. It's just a standing move. And if you look at the move with, it looks like she should slap you across the screen. And it's just like, psh, and you
Yeah.
barely move your head, right? And it's like, what
Yeah.
is this?
It's very, very lazy. MKX, I think that for the time it was really, really good. Now I think it's a bit more dated, but I remember like
True.
being on that snow stage and you could interact with the tree branch and
Yep.
you could swing on one and you could smack someone around the head of one and it felt very impactful. And I think if they built on things like that, because in Injustice, in the first Injustice, you could pick up certain items and they were unblockable, I think, like the TVs. And I was like, that's stupid. That shouldn't be a thing. But MKX, you could block the tree branch. And I think there was a healthy balance between making someone feel strong, but also not overwhelming the defender.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
No.
think they just need to. Mortal Kombat needs a complete overhaul. And I also don't think they should do one again in the next 4 years. I think they need to go away for a while now. I don't think people are going to forget soon what they've done with MK1. And I think that maybe this might be a golden opportunity to make that horror fighting game that they've been talking about for ages and run some tests on that and see what they can do next for Mortal Kombat, because if they bring Mortal Kombat 2 or 12 or whatever they call it and it's even slightly reminiscent of 11 and 1.
Yeah, people have had a bad. They didn't realize 11 left a bad taste in people's mouth, and then they released it. It's like they have no pulse on what's happening.
Yeah, they're completely disconnected from the conversation online, which is really bizarre considering they were the ones that were most on Twitter back in the day. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if like management has changed over there or something, but they're completely disconnected from what the players want. And I do think that if they listen to the more informed players, I think that it will breed a better product, because Namco listened and they reacted to things people were saying on Twitter within reason. Obviously, some people complain about things they didn't understand, but when you pay attention to the hardcore player base that understands your game, maybe to a degree that you don't even understand it, and you implement things to appease them, it will ultimately make the game better because we understand what's broken and what isn't. But with NRS, it seems like they're very reactionary to things that don't really matter. But then, like you said,
Hmm.
they'll leave an infinite in the game or they'll leave a block infinite, and it's like, how? Why did you leave that in there? Did you knew it was there?
Yeah, they're very reactionary. They'll say, well, we know things are a certain way in the beta. We'll let it rock. And then with Kenshi, we'll let it rock. We're not sure. And then Cyrex will come out and they'll say, well, now we are sure. Let everything rock or let nothing rock. You can't have an in between.
Yeah,
They are right now also caught in, you know how games are built on pillars, which is the basic, the idea, the theory on which the game is built on.
yeah,
Mortal Kombat has two pillars that, that when combined crumble under their own weight. In one pillar, and you hear people say this when you bring up something, it's an assist game. It's supposed to be crazy, right? But then if you bring up something else, they say, well, they're taking their time. They want to be safe. The two pillars cannot exist simultaneously.
yeah. Agreed.
And that is the problem. Why is Shujinko the way he is? Well, they wanted to be safe. He could be too much. Okay, well then why are these other assists the way they are? Why? And the answer isn't to tone it down, it's to scale them all up.
Yeah.
At this point, if it's going to be a party game, make it a party game. That's
Yeah.
all they can do, I feel like.
Yeah. At
That's
least
all they
make it
can do with
fun.
it. Yeah. They have to be at the point right now where they've lost the competitive audience and the casual audience for Tekken, but they can make it fun for casuals to come back to from time to time and for people to have a niche competitive scene and for them to say, well, hopefully in the next game, this would at least make you feel like they finally understand, and then it might buy a little bit of goodwill in the next game, kind of like a wait and see. And like you say, if they do what they say, they change the whole aesthetic. You can look at the game, put the game in beta. You can say, okay, clearly this product is now different.
Yeah.
But they definitely need to do something like that. I believe 100%.
I
The
think they need to
Peacemaker
offer
patch
free
is not
things as
going to
well.
change anything.
Yeah.
Good. What are they going to offer? You got
No, I think they need to offer free things as well because they sold us an unfinished product. But I stupidly believed them when they were advertising the game, and I bought the collector's edition. And I think that because they falsely advertised, because they sold us something that didn't work, because they removed crossplay randomly a week before the game was coming out, I think as a gesture of goodwill to the people that they messed up, I think that they should offer a lot of things for free. I think if they're going to do a story expansion, let us have it for free. If you're going to do certain like customizations or skins or any of those things, don't charge for it because that would be a way to make people go, okay, well, they made a big mess here, but at least they're trying. I would even be like, okay, I'm not going to shit on them as much because maybe they understand the error of their ways and they're trying to buy some goodwill. But you can't be charging people $10 for a skin in a game that's not even finished. That is outrageous. And
no.
I'm
The
also
skins are terrible.
I'm also not
Yeah.
against developers adding shops into games. I am against them doing it when they haven't even given me a complete product. Like with Tekken 8, it feels like a complete product, and so if they add a shop in and they charge outrageous prices, I'm just not going to buy anything. I'm going to, okay, whatever. Well, I still have a base game that I love. But with Mortal Kombat, you give me shit and then you tell me to buy stuff on top of it. It's like, who do you think you are? I'm not going to buy more shit. And you gave me this rubbish that's not even working properly. And now you want me to pay for skins that aren't even particularly good either.
Very true. And I think the cash shop left a really bad taste in people's mouth because they bought an incomplete game, and then it's like, oh, not only is the game incomplete, but it's something where now you're charging me $10 for skins, and the game isn't even complete. So I do think there's a lot of that in there, and I just don't. I just think that you've hit the nail on the head, and I don't think they realize that they need to just completely go back to formula in a lot of ways and
Yeah.
reinvent Mortal Kombat. But when they reinvent it, there are certain ideas they can keep around that they know are successful,
Yeah.
right?
Like Breakers. Yeah, I wouldn't never advocate for getting rid of Breaker. I don't know
Yeah,
why they did that in 11.
No, yeah, Breakers, 100% Breakers. I feel like they could even keep some of the normals for the characters, but the way those moves interact and are presented have to feel powerful. The characters cannot look like your same. I know everyone's like how gorgeous this game is. This game is the least gorgeous game on the market right now.
Yeah,
As
I've
far as
actually been turned off by how it looks. Even though
yeah,
it graphically it looks like nice, I just don't think the look that they went for fits Mortal Kombat. I get that they were doing a universe reset and like they're not in like times of war yet, and I guess the second one will turn into that, but it just doesn't feel like Mortal Kombat to me. When I think of Mortal Kombat, I think of like really cheesy generic techno music, really like over the top gore, women in like scantily clad.
like the KMFDM music from the movies and whatnot.
Yeah,
Right?
like
Yeah,
the movie feel. I feel like the movie really got Mortal Kombat like that.
yeah. Mortal Kombat 1, the original MK1 movie. Yeah,
Yeah, and
really
even
got
to a
it.
lesser extent, the Mortal Kombat Conquest series. I know it's really cheesy and really bad,
No,
but
I liked it. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
liked it.
liked it. I thought it was really good, and I thought the costumes were good. I know people take issue with over sexualizing the female characters, but I think that the whole like aesthetic of Mortal Kombat is everything is over the top. So I don't really have a problem with it personally. I think that they should go back to that. I think they should like them. They don't have to like go full on like browsers or
Yeah, yeah,
anything, but
yeah.
like just like even Tekken does it. Tekken like had the guys look over the top, the women look over the top, but I think they're being a bit too conservative, which is weird considering at the end of the fight you can gut your opponent. So I don't really know what they're worried about in terms of like brand image.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think also Mortal Kombat needs to realize that. I mean, they need to modernize their game. The way the character they've gotten away with it for so long, right? It used to be when people bring up how the characters move or whatever, it's a nitpick, etc. And like I said, they happen to get lucky that X was fun enough that, people would, get away with stuff, whatever.
Yeah,
But at this point, I think Mortal Kombat of old has left such a bad taste in people's mouth that they need a complete rebranding as to what Mortal Kombat is.
yeah.
Now,
They
when I
need to
say
go away
start
for
from
a while as well.
scratch, yeah, when I say make this a party game and then just start developing your next one
Yeah.
and make it take 3 or 4 years if need be.
Yeah, like what they
Um,
did with Street Fighter 4 Omega, they just turn it into like a party mode and then they pulled things from that into the next game.
yeah, I agree. In the next game, NetRS needs to realize there are things you can build upon. One thing you don't want to do is remake every normal and every special. You've already made them.
Yeah.
You know, I would pull from 9 and X as far as these are the characters' normals, right? Now, the way they look, the way they're presented, and the way they feel when they hit has got to completely change from how Mortal Kombat does things now,
Yeah.
right? I would keep Breaker. I would go back to, how characters played their arc. You know how they play, right? You know how a zoner plays. You know how a grappler plays. You know how multiple, like rushdown characters, some could be mixed, some could be pressure, right? You know how characters play. Though the groundwork for that has already been in there. Make it feel powerful, but make it a little more in depth, right? And it needs to feel powerful. The whole presentation, the whole look, the whole feel. Like the game has got to grab you as soon as you get on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is why I think you're saying like it can't be one of those things where play it for a week and you'll get into it. It needs to right away. You have to be like, holy shit! You have to instantly know that the game has changed. It feels different. It looks different. It sounds different. Like you said, people that don't even play Tekken, they see you do Fang Shoulder, sparkles everywhere. They're like, holy shit! And
Yeah.
they want to play it.
And they crack you,
It
you
looks,
crash into the wall and the phone box explodes, and that's why I kind of wanted Mortal Kombat to go back to 3D, because I know people don't have fond memories of the 3D games, but I feel like a 3D environment will really allow Mortal Kombat to sort of like spread its wings in terms of like how violent you can get and how cinematic it can look. Like if you even take a Tekken terrain but apply Mortal Kombat characters to it, and like you've got the phone boxes and the areas you can smash people through, and then imagine that for Mortal Kombat with similar sound effects but just much more violent. Like you're taking someone's face and smashing it through a brick wall, and it's got like a little cinematic part of the match which will grab the attention of the casuals. And as we've seen in Tekken, the hardcore player base doesn't mind it either, as long as it makes sense and the damage distribution is fine. I just think they
yeah.
need to look at Mortal Kombat for what it is. It's an over the top, like ridiculous fighting game, and just go balls to the wall with it. And don't worry about like people commenting about over sexualization or too much gore, and just say fuck it and throw the techno music in and go ham. But I don't think they're gonna do that. I think that the next Mortal Kombat game is again gonna be too conservative, and they're gonna be too worried about correcting mistakes from here. It's gonna look too similar to them as well, and we're gonna be back in the same mess.
Yeah, I ultimately think that this will be the first game that doesn't surpass the game of the previous.
Yeah,
I think Tekken 8 will obviously surpass it. I believe that Capcom, Street Fighter 6, by the end of the game's life, will also surpass this game in sales. But this game will sell well enough for them to say, good enough, make another one.
yeah, that's what I think
Yeah.
is gonna happen. I think they'll order them to make another one because it sold well enough.
Yeah. And I don't think anything that will ever change MK1 for the better will happen.
Yeah,
They're not going to make it a party game. They're going to stay conservative. I don't think the netcode will ever be fixed. And I think it will take them a very long time to integrate everything in properly. And then by the time that happens, the game is still watered down. It will be a game where people come back for a week. Like Peacemaker will come out. We all know what's going to happen. People will come back for a week. Because of Peacemaker, the interest will spike for a week. We'll have certain people making videos saying MK is dead. The weird thing is, why do they do this? They'll make a video saying, "Oh, I thought MK was dead," and laugh, knowing that within 7 days you're going to go back to 47 viewers and no players.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to hammer you even harder because we don't want that message to get through because we don't want people to think it's acceptable.
Yeah.
It just, it
It's
just,
like what True Underdog did recently, where he made that video about there being more console players, but completely missed the fact that when Mortal Kombat kicked off on console, it had 1.6 million players, and within 30 days they'd lost 404,000 players, which is insane. Like Street
yeah.
Fighter lost, I think maybe 2,000, and Tekken has lost about 3,000 in a month. For you to lose 404,000, and then fast forward today, and they've lost about, I think it's about 860 to a million players, and then to say, oh, because 100,000 came back, it's not dying. You have to be smoking something. The game is 100% on life support right now. I don't know
It
what
is.
I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, even if you go to the Steam charts, I know that Mortal Kombat is more apparently more heavily played on console. They're still shockingly low for a new game, even if you take into consideration most people are on console. Like I'm looking at it right now, the very same website that he referenced. There are only 5,000 people online right now in Mortal Kombat. When you compare that to Tekken, which has 45,000, and Street Fighter, which has 52,000, and Street Fighter's been out for longer, so you can't even really use the argument that Tekken's super new. This 5,000 for Mortal Kombat is embarrassing.
No, 100%. And that's what's going to happen with Peacemaker. He's going to come back, people are going to play for a week, and they're going to leave again.
Yeah,
It's one character is not the problem. The problem is the game in which that character is in.
yeah. No character can save this game.
I don't care how many characters they put in, they will the problem is they will be very simple, very effective, or very watered down.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're going to I wonder if they realize what needs to be done in this game.
no, I don't think they do. I don't think they know what they're doing. It doesn't. Their design philosophy doesn't make any sense. I don't think they understand how to create a character that allows people to express themselves freely. I think that the limited design of the Mortal Kombat 1 characters really speaks volumes to like how they look at fighting games. And I think that with MK9 and MKX, they stumbled into games that were fun and more expressive. I don't and their reactions to them really like give credence to that notion because they don't understand what they had. They didn't understand that okay, this is a lot of fun, but maybe some things are a little bit broken, so we can change stuff. What they did is they decided to take everything out that was fun, ground the game completely, and then randomly have a character like Jackie just fly about the screen and irritate people.
Yeah, they don't really under. And what's crazy is, it's fitting that Tekken is the game to do it, because I feel like if it was Street Fighter that really started outselling them, right? I feel like I didn't mean to bypass your Jackie point, but I just wanted to get this out. If it was Street Fighter, people would say, "Well, it's Street Fighter," right?
Yeah,
Tekken went through a complete restart. Like Tekken was at the bottom of the fighting game world.
yeah,
And they took out Mortal Kombat, which is something that you would never imagine. And it's probably one of the most complex games, which completely shatters the fact that it has to be simple.
yeah.
On your part about
It's literally the polar opposite.
yeah, about Jackie flying around the screen, one of the biggest problems with MK11 was you had a game in which it was quote unquote more balanced, but you only saw a handful of characters. And that's because most characters played a generic system way to play, right? Strike throw, down one, you know, mids being slower, you do a string that's like -3, then you down one right away because all they can do is down one back because if they do a mid or a hot, you see what I'm saying? It was a very simplistic system. The flawless block was atrocious. You hit somebody, you're minus 100, and
Yeah.
they flawless block and launch you, and you're like, I'm supposed to follow my advantage. The But there are characters that look different, right? That played their own game. Jackie did, Cabal did, Fujin did. Those are some of the most popular characters. Evo was Fujin versus Fujin,
Yeah, that was
right?
painful.
I mean, it overall it just came down to enjoy the game. Most people gravitated to the few characters that did their own thing,
Yeah.
as opposed to characters that played the generics. This game, you see the same thing. People are playing Raiden, right? And also, I think this is completely embarrassing, by the way. In a pro, and just to get back what they get away with, in a pro series tournament, I forget who it was, and people make it like, oh, well, she wasn't going to win anyway. She should have reported it. In a pro series tournament, somebody used Raiden, moved before the round, and killed her in the last round.
Yeah. I heard about it.
And
Yeah.
the point is not she should have reported it. The point is not, well, it's not like she was going to win anyway. The point is, why would anyone want to enter another tournament again
Yeah.
with that happening? This is something NRS, this has been talked about since the first week of the game. Why is that still? And it happened in a Pro Series qualifier. Had that happened in Tekken, I'd be logging on a button check right now to read about it.
Oh, 100%. They would not stand for something like that.
MK, people just let stuff sweep under the rug. NRS has gotten away with murder. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. I do think Tekken is the game of the future. I think Street Fighter 6 will also be very, very good.
Yeah.
I think MK is done until further notice, and I don't think anything will stop that.
Yeah, I think that I mean, Street Fighter definitely set a good standard. Street Fighter 6 is a really good game. I think that as time goes on, it will get better because the roster's going to get bigger, and I think they're gonna do their first balance patch when Akuma comes out, whatever that might be. But I think Tekken really has set a new standard for fighting games. I think there was a time where Mortal Kombat was the standard for like story mode. I think that's changed now as well. I think that they really dropped the ball with this story mode really badly. I think that them doing the whole multiverse MCU thing again after doing a universe reset left a bad taste in the casual audience mouth. And to be honest with you, it took me out of being connected to the characters, because
because they bring you back. They just kill you and bring you back, or they bring back two versions of you, and now this is the other version of you.
I'm like,
it's
what?
like Gamora's gone, but now there's the new Gamora
Yeah.
from the past who's now in the future, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted a self-contained story, and like with Tekken, like we all know Heihachi's dead now, and even if they decide to bring him back, I'm like, okay, but this is Heihachi. It's not Earth 2 Heihachi. It's just Heihachi survived the volcano, and we got a satisfying climax in Tekken 8. It might have been short, but I feel like they did everything they needed to do in the story. I didn't turn it off at any point. I sat there from beginning to end. I had a good time. It didn't feel like it had any fluff in it. And with Mortal Kombat 1, you get to chapter 10, and I'm like, okay, the story's in parts it was dragging. I was like, okay, it's dragging, but do you know what? It's a self-contained story, so whatever. And then you get to chapter 10, and Shang Tsung shows up with all the other characters from the past, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, are we doing this again? And then the other Sindel kills our new Sindel, and I'm like, you guys have lost me. Like, it's just dumb. And then by the end of the game,
like, well, no, Katana survived here. Here, Shang Tsung won. Here, Raiden won. And it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, you just took me out of the story completely. And then by the end of the game, you don't even know who the canon fighter is with Liu Kang. You're just picking someone, and you're running up fighting versions of yourself, like these randomly thrown together versions of other characters, and then it ends. And I'm just like, that was rubbish. Like, that was such a cop-out ending. And I remember when Ed Boon was promoting it, it was like, we've never done anything like this before. And I was really thinking to myself, oh, they must have like some insane ending. And it was just dog shit. There's no other way to put it.
And then during the story mode, you see skins that they're just going to sell you later for $10, which just gets you even more mad.
Yeah. Basically, all of that was just promotion.
All of it was promotion. Yeah, I don't think there's any hope. But I'm glad you're enjoying Tekken 8. I'm very much enjoying it. And I think the fighting game landscape, to quote Maximilian, what is expected of a fighting game has changed forever.
Yeah, dramatically. People are gonna have to. I don't expect this sort of quality from like smaller games like Guilty Gear or whatever. But I expect this. I expect this level of quality from Street Fighter. I expect it from Mortal Kombat, and maybe even to a lesser extent the Dragon Ball games, because I know they're really popular now. Even maybe even Virtua Fighter. Like I don't expect Virtua Fighter to come out the gate the way Tekken has, but I do expect that they're gonna have to step up their game if they decide to bring a new one out. Because Virtua Fighter has been criticized for being extremely bland as well, which is a shame because Virtua Fighter is really I think it's a really good fighting game. It's just there's not much going on. But yeah, the landscape has changed forever in every department. It's not just about gameplay anymore, although that's the most important thing. There's so much surrounding it and how they present it to us that if Mortal Kombat decides to do what they've done with this game, MK2 or MK12, whatever they call it, that could be the final nail in their coffin.
No, I agree. I think they're on dangerously close to completely killing their franchise.
Yeah,
But again, when you've had success on the name of a franchise built from an old era, and you don't realize you have to bring it into the modern one, this is, I guess, what happens.
yeah, and it's sad because Mortal Kombat was my favorite franchise for a long time, and I've got very fond memories of growing up playing it. And even though it was broken back then, like it is, I mean, it's not. It was very broken back then. It was fun. Like it felt fun. Even the look of the old digital Mortal Kombat games, like it felt like Mortal Kombat. Like,
And they were
oh,
fun.
yeah, I've got the Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet on my second YouTube channel that I do with Sabi. You can see it in the background. Like we play the old Mortal Kombat game because it's presented in a very fun way. But Mortal Kombat 1, it feels soulless. It doesn't feel like a Mortal Kombat game. I feel like you can put like generic characters from any universe in there, and you would not look at it and think, oh, they're in a Mortal Kombat universe. It just doesn't look like that.
No, not at all, which is why, to your point, they've got to just basically redo all of it.
Yeah, they got to gut the entire thing. Need to start from scratch, and I would be okay with. I would be perfectly fine with us not getting a Mortal Kombat game for the next 6-7 years if it means they go away, they do everything over, and they get people in that understand fighting games and understand how they're supposed to work. Because, as you said, the excuse that we need to appeal to the casuals is out the window because casuals are eating up Tekken, and it's the most difficult fighting game on. It's one of the most difficult games in existence. Most people that I know that play very difficult games will not. They don't want to touch Tekken because they're like, this is too hard.
And even
And
that's changed.
yeah, even that's true. Even they've come over and they're like, okay, well, Tekken 8 holds your hand. It literally tells you what to do, which is the criticism Tekken used to get, right? It was so complex and there was no real training facilities. So if Tekken can get people to play, Mortal Kombat has zero excuse. They can go balls to the wall. They can change things up. I don't believe that they don't have the money and resources to not do it. I just think they're lazy and they've won for so long that they haven't really learned how to lose and they fucked around. Now they're gonna find out.
I guess, I guess in closing here, what I want to say is Mortal Kombat became the WCW Monday Nitro
Yeah,
of fighting games.
basically, that's basically it.
They won for 83 weeks and then they never won again.
Yeah, but I mean, if they can take from wrestling, and you know when a wrestler gets injured and they're like, okay, you're recovered now, but we're gonna put you on ice for a little while, and
Yeah,
we'll let
bring you back.
anticipation build. Like when Randy Orton came back recently, people went mad, and then CM Punk came back and people went crazy. I think if Mortal Kombat goes away for a long time, and then they reintroduce it in like 7 years with completely reworked everything and that classic soundtrack to like get the old heads back in. I think that I think that there's a way to save it. I think that if they push another one out in the next 3 to 4 years and it's even close to what MK11 and MK1 look like visually, then they're cooked. They're gonna get cooked by everyone.
People need to understand also when they say the game looks great, you've severely lowered your standards.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
it doesn't look bad, and on its own in a vacuum it looks good, but you can't compare it to Tekken.
Yeah, no,
Like,
Tekken visually is. I mean, when I look at them, if you look at Mortal Kombat in the story mode, then I'm like, yeah, it looks really pretty. But when you're actually playing it, everything is very still and calm. And in Tekken, there's so much going on, and there's so much to look at, and the way the characters interact with each other, with how the bodies move. there are times when you can freeze Tekken and you can see, okay, they skipped a couple like motions here to make the limbs look better in the fight. But 9 times out of 10, the game looks beautiful at all times. Whereas Mortal Kombat, it is very still, and so I don't appreciate the visuals as much as I do. Even in Street Fighter, I prefer how Street Fighter 6 looks. I think they're too interested in Mortal Kombat with photorealism, and I think that's starting to hurt the franchise a bit.
No, I would agree 100%. Well, Peacemaker comes out in a couple of days. I guess we will. The ball is in NetherRealm's court if they're going to do anything at all, and if they don't, I think there's. I mean, at this point, that the game is beyond done.
Yeah, no, the
So,
game's finished. There's nothing they can do. I think they should release their combat pack and then just do what they're doing now and disappear and come back in a couple years and maybe people will forgive them.
so I think that's about the only play. I want to thank you for joining me on this recording, man. It's always good to talk to someone who actually has a very intelligent understanding of fighting games and the way things work.
No, I
So it was
appreciate you having
definitely.
me on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you much for joining me.
No worries, bro.